I was with the 428th Medical Collecting Company. When we got to France, our CO said, "Well, I'm going to go down the line a bit and see my other friend, the CEO." So he went down there, and he was walking around and got his leg blown off. So then we got a new CO, and that was the best thing that ever happened. He was one of the greatest people I ever met. Yeah. He was Captain Dean from Louisville, Kentucky, and he was one great individual. And we had a, relatively speaking, I mean, we had a fairly enjoyable time. Yeah. We used to get 5-gallon cans of 200 proof alcohol, and we used to mix that with pineapple juice. And it wasn't a bad drink, but in the morning, oh my Lord, you had a head twice the size of you. Yeah, you didn't feel too well. We set up first aid stations, and that was about it. We had I think 12 ambulances, and I was stationed at the 35th Evacuation Hospital with a litter platoon, and so that's where I spent most of the war, was with the evacuation hospital. We used to get a telegram that Army was sending up 500 German prisoners from Italy. So I used to go to the big hospital in Nuremberg. There were 5 German hospitals in Nuremberg. And I used to go to the big hospital in Nuremberg and tell them, I'm going to have room for 450 or 550 wounded people coming up next week. So they'd move enough people out to the POW camps so they could all be unloaded when they came up. And always in the last car, they had guys that were in like a big laundry bag. Those were people who were insane. Yeah. So they'd load them up and get them off to one of the hospitals. We set up first aid stations, yeah, for the wounded. One of the things I always regretted, we were following the 6th Armored Division out to the Brest Peninsula, and we came upon this second lieutenant, and he was dead. And so we buried him. And of course, I realize now that was a big mistake, because we didn't know about the desert rats that were in the desert. We were stationed at the 35th Evacuation Hospital. And I remember when they were getting ready to make the push through St. Lo, that was the first big major push. They emptied all the hospitals that were in tents, by the way. They emptied all the hospitals to get ready for the wounded. And they made this airfield nearby, and all these planes landed, one right after the other, one right after the other. And all these young guys got out, you know, and they were 18, 19 years old that were flying these planes. they loaded all the wounded into those planes. They all took off for England. Well, I remember when the Germans, I was near the Autobahn when the Germans started to surrender. And I remember counting them. There was 16 across, and they all had their hands behind their head like this. And that was as far as the eye could see. Thousands. They all had to be fed. They all had to have medical care. You talk about logistics. Incredible. And they had these tractor trailers with sides about 4 feet high, and they'd load them on that. They're all standing in there. They're packed as close as can be. And then they'd take some of the guys and they'd throw them up on top. Yeah. That was at the camp where the people had all lice, and this big Cadillac pulled up, and this general got out, and he had an aide with him, and he had a pad and pencil on the board, and he said, "What are you going to need to take care of these people?" And the CO turned to me and he says, "You tell them what we're going to need, Lieutenant." Jeez. I came up with a long list of powders and squirt things to squirt the powder, and I came up with quite a list. And they left, and he turned to me, and he said, "Lieutenant, you're the biggest BSer we've ever had." Yeah. Oh, yes. And then there's a woman here. Her husband was a prisoner of war. And the Third Army secured a road in Germany. They secured this road in Germany, and they sent, I don't know, 50 or 75 ambulances down to this prisoner of war camp and picked up all these guys and brought them out. And they got away with it. I think what happened when they checked my eyes, and of course they could have had a shortage in the medical outfits. So it's a toss-up. And then I remember a memo came through that if your eyesight was like 2300 or 2400, you could get out of the combat zone. And this other lieutenant came to me and he said, "Well, why don't we get out of here?" And I said, "Not me." I said, "I'm staying right here." I said, "You go back to the camp, and when they call for men, you don't know, you could end up in the infantry, even though you're a medic. If there's shortage of men, they take your medical badge off and you're an infantryman." So I said, "If you want to go back, you go back." "Oh," he said, "I never thought of that." After the war, he wrote me a letter and thanked me for keeping him from going back. My outfit was, and a lot of other outfits, were sent down to Marseille, France, which is in the Caribbean Sea.
Mediterranean.
The Mediterranean, yeah. And I remember when we loaded up to come home, the Mediterranean it's as smooth as that tabletop, not a wave, just like a mirror. And I remember we were racing another boat to Gibraltar, and when you got to Gibraltar, you could look ahead and you could see the Atlantic Ocean, and the waves are going all crazy. And in the Mediterranean, you're just as smooth as could be.